Hey, kia ora, Helen Brahms, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona, and I know it is late. I just finished work. Yep, it's 10:07, and I finished work at 10 o'clock tonight. We had a slight emergency that required where I helped out and helped cover. So it's been a very long day. Look at my eyes. Oh, they look terrible. But it's Thankful Thursday, so I am grateful that I'm just grateful for today. It's been an awesome. Oh, my hair, it's a mess. I'm sorry. Oops. Wrong side. Oh, yeah, that was the right side. And then I pull it all forward again. Oh, I'm a mess. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm normally going to bed by now. It's been an awesome day. I am very grateful for everything that happened today, for the people I got to assist and help out with. And yeah, it's been a long day. Poor Zeffie. I did take a break and took her out for a walk and got to meet up with our friend who she got to meet her friend Chloe that she hasn't seen for a while, and Chloe is such an adorable dog, and got to talk with Chloe's owner for a while. He had COVID a few weeks back, and he's looking so much better than when I last saw him, so he's doing really, really well. And Chloe was happy to see Zeph, and Zeffie was happy to see Chloe. So everybody was happy. It was an awesome walk. And I didn't even have time to get dinner because we went out for our walk. And I said, I'm taking 30 minutes. Oops, pulling my hair out at the same time. Taking 30 minutes, going to walk the dog, come back, grab some dinner. And yeah, that didn't work. We just did the whole time was dog walking. But I managed to, because of the rate that the calls were coming in, I managed to get up, make myself something to eat, and sit back down, and then get back to work again. So it wasn't a problem. It's how I normally do my snacks. When you're 3 steps from the kitchen, it doesn't take much to be able to get up and grab something, and you can still hear if any chats come in. So it's not like you've got to go to a completely another room at the other end of the house and try and, I just step across. And I have no idea how many of these I have had today. I have been draining this like crazy. Yeah, and I feel like I need to have another 1 or 2 of those before I go to bed. And it's 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, yeah, not going to happen. I'll be up all night. But, I'm very grateful for all the stuff that I've been through today with everything. It's just one of those days that you just feel really good about it. Doesn't matter what happened. You feel good about it. You set the intention, and it works. It works. I can tell you that. So what are you most grateful for today? Let's see, what do we got on here? Oh yeah, lots of work. So what are you most grateful for today that happened to you? Have you been talking about some of your favorite holiday and vacation memories? Let's see, trying to think of one. Oh, I know one. When my parents came over just after I got sparkles, and literally just after, I got sparkles in May, and then at the end of June, beginning of July, I flew back home to New Zealand for my brother's 50th. And I said to my parents, I said, hey, why don't you get on the plane? Why don't you come back with me? And we'll go for a road trip. And this is before I got Zeffie. And so I came back. I think I was back for 2 weeks before they came over. That was when I did that really cool reversing of sparkles down a hill, and as I'm going down a hill, turning a corner and parking perfectly between 2 trees. Yes, I had people directing me. I had somebody behind giving directions to the guy that was walking beside the driver's window. We did have to stop at one point so he could turn the umbrella, because the umbrella would have caught on my my driver's mirror. And he just turned it slightly, and then I could continue back in, but I didn't have to do any go forward and go back. It was literally down on one movement and in between 2 trees. And when I got out of it, and I was sort of and we're looking to see, where the trees were in relation to how far away from the RV they were, and would it affect the slides coming out. But we were perfectly parked. They put me right back in the spot there. And I said, had you made me get out and walk to see where I had to drive through, I wouldn't have done it. I would not have backed down into here. I would have been like, oh, but because they actually gave me the opportunity at the beginning to walk down the driveway into the amphitheater and show me where I was going to park, and I said no. And I said, if I did walk down before I did that, I said I wouldn't have done it. I would not have had the confidence to do it. But because my dad spent many times teaching me how to drive in reverse, and gave me really good advice, like just take your time, watch your mirrors, and listen to anybody that's directing you. And hopefully they know what they're doing. But it's basically just take your time and watch your mirrors. And that's basically what I did. And because as we started, they had me go forward at the top of the piece of road I had to go down, and I didn't realize how steep it was. And so they got me to start backing up. Okay. And all of a sudden I felt like I was laying on my back. And I kind of was, because it was steep. It was steep. It wasn't straight up and down, but it was pretty steep. And I'm laying on my back, and I'm trying to keep my foot up there on the brake so I don't go flying down the back of the thing. Because as I got partway down the hill, they started turning me. Had to swing around towards the right to get in between the trees. So when we got there, it was kind of fun. When we got there, that was fine. And then a couple of days later, I had to go pick up my parents. And I'm telling them all about this great reversing job. And as we're driving up to the road there, I said, oh, look, there's Sparkles down there. And she's down there in that little bowl thing. It was a great parking. I tell you, it was an awesome, awesome parking area. It was great. It was fantastic. Loved it there. There were trees all around. It was quiet. It was amazing in there. Loved that spot. Don't know if I'll do it again though. And so when I picked up my parents from LAX, and we had to drive all the way back down to San Diego. And normally Brad had done all that driving for me. We'd go up, we'd drive so we could get in time to see the plane land. And the last time we did it when Brad was alive, as we're coming along the 405 and we're getting close to the exit where we need to get off, Mum and Dad's plane goes straight in front of us as it's coming into land. It was kind of cool. Okay, it was up a little bit. We're in Brad's Yukon, and we see their plane go right in. And we knew it was our plane because one, it was an Air New Zealand plane, and it had the dragon on it from The Hobbit. And my uncle had sent me pictures of their plane, so I knew that was their plane coming in, because they only had the one with the dragon on it. And it flew right in front of us across the 405 to land at LAX. So we knew that they were landing. And then my brother sends me a message going, they've landed. He's back in New Zealand watching their flight. I'm like, I know. They just literally crossed the road in front of the freeway in front of me. And of course, I didn't have my camera up because I didn't know that they were that close. But like, I'm watching them on the thing. And then we're looking at the planes going, well, is it the one closest to us? Is it the one further on the far side? But it was the one nearest. It was the nearest one on the south side of the airport. And so we're trying to figure it. I'm like, okay, we got to see them land, and not where we wanted to be to see them land, but we got to see them land. And this time, did I get to do it this time? And I think I got up there. Can't quite remember that day very well. It's a little foggy, but I did get up there. We got them in the car, got them snacks. I had snack food with me because they've been on a long flight. And then we hopped in the car and drove down in rush hour traffic. Kind of a bit of a rush hour traffic. It took us longest to get back. And then I said, I got to the top area where we had to go down to get into the amphitheater. And I said, okay, just remember what you are about to see, we did in reverse. I did in reverse in the RV. And they're like, okay. And so I take them up over this thing. And my mother's like, oh. She said, you backed the RV down. I said, yep. And I said, we didn't have to shuffle it. I said, we just went smoothly down. I said, we stopped at this point. I stopped at that point. I said, see that umbrella? We had to turn it a little bit so that the tip of the umbrella wouldn't hit the side mirror. And I said, and then we carried on, went around here. And I said, about this point, we started turning. But of course, we had to go straight ahead to park the car. And my dad was like, that was pretty impressive. But then we were there for a few nights. We got caught up with the boys, got my parents caught up with Josh and Chris and Ash and Brandon, Nadia, and the boys, and we had a good time with them. And I think it was our last night. We met somewhere, and we were down at Chris and Ash's place. They live in downtown San Diego, and they had a spare parking space, and so our car was being parked at their place while we were traveling. And I think Josh drove us home that night. I think he drove us back that night. And then the next day we packed up and got on the road, and my first long trip driving in the RV, and not used to drive times in an RV, had very many lessons about drive times in RVs, because we had Google Maps on to help get us to where we needed to go. But I didn't know at the time that there's actually a thing called RV Trip Wizard, and there's other programs out there, but the one I use is RV Trip Wizard, where you put in the dimensions of your vehicle, so length, width, height, the type of vehicle it is. Now it's a Class A, and you can also put the weight in there if you know what that is as well. And you put, this is my start point, this is my end point, and it takes you on RV safe routes. So then they're not going to end up taking you down a road where you're going to end up with a bridge that's 12 foot and you've got a 13-foot clearance, and you need 13-foot clearance. So it takes all of that into account and that sort of thing. And the drive time, and when you're calculating drive times, you put in what your average speed is. And somebody in one of the RV groups suggested putting in 40 miles an hour. He says normally you're probably going to be traveling around 60, 65. He says the sweet spot in a Class A is around 63. I'm like, got it. He says, but put your drive, your average speed in as 40 miles an hour. He said, because then your drive times will be more realistic and it allows you times for breaks. We didn't find that out till after we got to Moab, Utah, which was like, what did we drive? 11 hours that day, I think it was, because we left Vegas in the morning, drove up to Moab. And if anybody's done that drive between Vegas and Moab, you end up coming in on this road and then you've just got this massive canyon in front of you. You're like, wow, what a great view. And you go down the canyon, across the canyon floor, up the other side, over the hill, down the other side. And you're doing that for miles. And I'm like looking at my GPS here on my phone going, when the hell are we turning off? It was supposed to be like a 6.5 hour drive. No, it's an 11-hour drive in an RV. 6.5 hours in a car, 11 hours in an RV. And that trip we did 3,227 miles in 27 days. And I learned some valuable lessons there. One, Google Maps and RV drive times are very different. Once we found out about RV Trip Wizard, got it downloaded, got everything in there, our drive times became more realistic for us. Lesson number 2 was, yes, watch your drive times. Don't do more than you are capable of doing. I had a huge mental battle going on, especially on that road to Moab. I was sort of like, oh, I mean, the views are absolutely stunning with those canyons, stunning. But it got to the point where the mental game was playing really hard in my brain. And it was sort of like, I'm done. I just need to find somewhere to pull over, and I'm sort of walking away. And I'm like, crap, can't do that. Got the parents with me. Can't leave them in the middle of nowhere. Damn, got to keep going. And this mental game was going on for hours in my head. And then we finally got to turnoff. Oh, thank goodness we finally got to the turnoff. You know, we should be about 30 minutes away. Yeah, no, we still another hour and a half. And then we found where the campsite was, but we also had to get groceries. So we had to drive past the campsite area, go find the supermarket, get the groceries, get back in the RV. We got back to the campsite. They'd already called us, and we knew we were not going to get there when they were open, when the office was open. So they told us where the late check-in stuff was, what site we were on. And we got back to the campground, found the site really easy because it was just really easy to find. It was a pull through. So we pulled in, and the sun is just starting to set. And we had these red hills around us. And the way the sun was hitting those, it was a stunning sunset, and I was too exhausted to enjoy it. I was just like, I just want to get. Mum took over the kitchen. Dad and I got everything hooked up. And then we basically came inside, and I was mentally exhausted. I was physically exhausted. So the other thing was, you got to take care of yourself. And we were doing, on that trip, we did several one-night stays. And that was another lesson I learned, was when you're traveling long distances, minimum 2-night stay. You have to have a minimum 2-night stay, because by the time you've done the driving, and I don't drive any more than 4 hours or around 250 to 300 miles. Other people do a lot more distance. I'm by myself. If I had somebody to take over the driving, yes, we could definitely travel more distance. But since that trip, I have learned that got to be on the campsite around 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, because it gives you time to set up, walk around, stretch your legs a little bit, instead of getting to a campsite, trying to get everything set up before the sun sets, and then you've got to walk the dog, and then you got to do this, and it's just sort of like, no, it's too much. So on campsite by 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock at the absolute latest. That way, if you're in an area where they're getting early sunsets and stuff, you're still set up in time, and you get to enjoy the day a little bit as well. You get to recover a little bit. The next day is all about recovery. I sit down, I do a little bit of work. I do some work that day, and take some time to rest and relax, because I need to have that mental and physical break from driving. And then the day after, so we've got a full day of a little bit of work in the morning, the afternoon's off, and then the next day we're back on the road again. So 2-day driving. Yeah, 2 night stays on wherever we go. And then what was the other thing we learned? Oh yeah, we learned about drive times and distances. My dad was an awesome navigator. My mum's a really good navigator too, but she didn't like being up there in the passenger seat. So she sat on the couch behind the driver's seat, and Dad sat up there, and he had, because he got the big dashboard, and he had the little slide out tray, and he had the road map there, and he had the book called Next Exit. And this book, you go to the interstate that you are driving on. So we, lots of different interstates, and it tells you every single exit along that interstate, whether you're going north or south, east or west, and it's just the interstates. It's not the state roads. It's only the interstates. And the cool part is it also puts where the rest areas are. And is it just a parking area, or is it a full service rest area? So that was really cool. I had that, because there were times I'm driving, I'm like, okay, Dad, I need to take a break. Where's the next rest area? And he would look up, and he was keeping track of where we were on the map, along with the road markers and everything else. And he was able to look in this book and say, okay, well, you've got one coming up in 6 miles. It's up ahead on the left, or it's on the right, because some are on the left and some are on the right. So yeah, it was great having a navigator there. So hydration while driving is super important. I now actually have one of those Camelback things, and I'm trying to work out, and I thought about this the other day. I thought, well, if I put that on, and this water bottle will now sit in the cup holder up there, which is fine. But I'm doing this one-handed. Well, this is trying not to get this to spin at the same time. And so I thought the other day, I have one of those Camel water bags. What if I put it on the front? Would that be okay? Because I can't put it on my back because I'm sitting, but if I put it on the front, would that work? Or would it get in the way of steering? So we're going to think about that one a little more. Might take it on a car ride one day and see how that goes. I know it's totally different driving, steering wheels at different angles. Those seats up there are way more comfortable than the car seats, I'll tell you that. But, it was just these little things that you think about along the way, and little tweaks and changes that you make. So it was a lot. We had a great time. We ended up going, let's see, we started in San Diego, went to Vegas, spent a night in Vegas, and that was a great resort. I want to go back to that one. Then we went to Moab for 2 nights, and on the day in between, we rented a car, rented an SUV, and we took lunch with us, took a whole bunch of water with us. My parents were like, oh, you don't need that much water. And the guy, the Lyft guy that was driving us from the campground down to where the rental car was like, so where are you going? Oh, we're going to go into Canyonlands today. He says, well, make sure you take plenty of water. I said, well, how much do you recommend? And I'd already figured out. And he says, oh, you got to have at least 1 gallon of water per person. I said, we've got 4 gallons with us. He says, you'll be fine. And my parents were like, because I was telling them, we need to get, when we're at the supermarket the night before, I was like, we need to get water to take into the canyons. If we're going to be there for a while, we need to stay hydrated. And the guy was like, something about if the air was wet, it just annoys you, but if it's dry, it kills you, or something like that. He had some little saying thing. And so we picked up the rental car and drove it up to Canyonlands. We had our food with us, we had our water with us, and off we went up to Canyonlands, and did some little trails here and there, but mainly it was just drive up, get out, walk around, and have a look at the views and everything else. But it was a really, really good day. And then, of course, the next day we were back in the RV, and off we went again. And this time we went from Moab to Salt Lake City. There were more of those canyon things again. That was a long drive, but we stayed at the KOA. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was in Salt Lake City, and it was right near the trams that go into town, and it was a Sunday. And my parents said, we're here, we'd like to go see the temple. And I went, okay. So like, I want to go see it too, and hadn't had a chance to. So off we went. And where we got off the tram, we walked around the corner and I went, oh, and my parents are like, and my mum's like, what? And I go, look. And she's like, and it's got, Family Search Library on it all. I can't remember exactly what it had, the words it had on it, but it was the Family Search Library in Salt Lake City, like the big one, the best one. And my mum's sort of like, well, what is it? I said, family tree, main family tree library. And she's like, we don't have time to go. This is, yeah, but they're closed. They had just the main floor open, which was like an introduction as to where everything was and that sort of stuff. And I says, yeah, but they're closed. My mum says, well, we're not here to see that. We're going across the And it was really funny because the tour guide that we had there ended up being a New Zealander. We had a New Zealand woman from Auckland and this Italian woman who had this really, really thick accent. So you really had to listen to her. But they took us into the Tabernacle, where known for the Tabernacle Choir, and they're talking about the curve of the roof and the walls and stuff, and telling us about I think it's something like 90,000 pipes in there or something for the organ. There was a guy just up there playing on the organ. It was beautiful. And then the Italian girl was saying, and the curvature and the shape of the roof and the inside of the tabernacle mirrors the top of your mouth, because they reckon that was the best for acoustics. It was all to do with acoustics. And the Italian woman just raised her voice slightly, and we're watching people on the other side of the tabernacle going, well, where's that coming from? And so it doesn't matter where in the tabernacle you are, you get to hear everything. You can have somebody at the pulpit there and you get the same sound all the way around, and it was just incredible. So that was a really cool trip. Then we got the tram back to the I took them over to the convention center to show them all the road signs in front of the convention center, and then we went and got the tram back to the campground, and we get back there, and they had warned us when we checked in to make sure that we had a water pressure regulator on our thing, because they said we have very high water pressure here, and it can end up damaging your pipes and your hoses and everything else if you don't have the regulator on it. I said, I have a regulator, we're going to be good. We got back, there's this huge flood of water all around the tow trailer that was next to us, and it turned out we're walking back, and there's a golf cart like going away, but we get there and they had that little short hose, then the water filter. The water filter's laying on the ground. The little short hose is going like this with the water as one of the campground people are turning the thing off. And I was like, well, he didn't put, and Mum and Dad says, what's that tube thing laying on the ground? I said, that's the water filter. I said, it's not a water regulator. They didn't put the water regulator on before, the water pressure regulator on before they put the filter on, which they should have done, because the filter is not a regulator. And they was like, oh. And so Mum was really curious. So she was always making sure that she could sit where she could see if anybody was coming in. And she comes in, she goes, they've come back. She says, they've come back. And so, of course, she's like at the kitchen window, like looking like she's preparing dinner or whatever. And she's watching everything. It was hilarious. That's where I get my nosiness from, my mother. You watch everything going on in the neighborhood. It's awesome. So yeah, that was our entertainment for the evening. Then the next day we got in the RV and we went to Boise, Idaho. Dad's got first cousins that live in Boise, Idaho. One of his aunts moved to the States at the end of the Second World War. She was on a war bride ship that went from New Zealand to the US, and she was on the last war bride ship that went over. And she had her she had one or two kids with her at the time. I can't remember, but she married an American GI when they were down in New Zealand at the time, met and married him and had a kid, and she moved over here. And so we got to go to Boise, Idaho, and I got to meet first cousins once removed. My dad got to see his first cousins again. And we were parked in the yard of one of the first cousins, and it was really cool because at the back of the area where we parked the RV, it had the little parking thing that said Kiwi parking only. And I was like, yes. So I actually got a picture of Casey Kiwi sitting next to that parking sign. But they were fantastic. we went over to Mary's place and we had dinner there the next day. Mary took us out for the morning thing, and then Steve came and picked us up and took us up into the mountains, and then he took us to the Kiwi Cafe that's there. We get all this good Kiwi tucker and got a taste of home from there. That was a really good place. And we were there just the 2 nights, I think it was. We were there 3 nights. We were there 2 or 3 nights, but we left there and went up to Plymouth, Washington, which is just across the Columbia River. And this was this is one of the best campgrounds we had been in. It's done by the Engineer Army Corps or the Army Corps of Engineers. I can never remember which way around that is. But it was like $10 a night. I would have happily stayed there for like a week. I would have been fine. And depending which site you was on is whether you went counterclockwise or clockwise around the thing. And so we had to go counterclockwise, and because they were all pull-through sites, and the pull-through sites means you come on one side of it, you go through the other, you stop, you park, and then you just drive out. You don't have to back up or anything. And on these pull-through sites, you had the campsite area out to the side, and you had an island. You had your parking spot, and then there was an island on the driver's side, which is where all your hookups were, and they had full hookup, 30, 50 amp, sewer, and water. And we were only there for the night, but we had this fantastic site. I mean, everything's there on the island, and you didn't have to worry about, and it was parallel parked, and then from the curb all the way down to the riverbank, and you had to go down the riverbank, then go up and over to get to the river, was your campsite. I'm sort of like, you could put like about 7 or 8 tents in that space. It was huge. It was massive. And they had a picnic table there, and they had the fire pit there, so you could have your own fire. And the fire pits are done with wheel rims without the tires on them. And it was beautiful, beautifully landscaped. It was just really well maintained. It was awesome, and it was $10 a night. And I thought I got to come back here at some point. And then we left there, and from Plymouth we went up to a place about an hour north of Seattle in the middle of nowhere. We were at this camp. It was literally in the middle of nowhere. It was on one of the inlets and things, which was really cool. We got some amazing sunsets. I think that one we were there for 3 nights. And we just had a couple of days at this campground doing next to nothing. It was awesome. You know, we go for walks around the campgrounds and stuff. And we left there and went up to Vancouver, and we had a campground there in Vancouver. One of the smallest sites we ever stayed at. It was a tiny site. It was tiny. I had enough room to get the slides out, but our slide was almost touching the picnic table at the campsite next to us, and his awning was almost touching my slide. He was in a van, and so we were there for, I think, 3 nights. We did there. We walked. There was a shopping mall about a 15-minute walk down the road, and then across from that shopping mall was a grocery store. So I got out my little pink cart, that looks like the little red wagons. I got to fold up one of those. It's pink. And we went trotting off down through the mall with this thing, and across the road to the grocery store. And then we got our groceries, put them in the pink cart, and just towed it all the way back. It was about a 20-minute walk to get to the grocery store, I think it was. And so we did that on the first night we got there, did the grocery shopping, took them to Five Guys for the first time at Five Guys. They'd never been to Five Guys before. So we took them there. And when it came to ordering the fries, I said, just ask for 1 large. And the 3 of us will. And my mum's like, oh, fries. And they go, do you want fries with that? I said, hang on. We'll take 1 large fry. And she's like, oh, no. I said, we'll take 1 small fry. 1 small fry. That's what we got. 1 small fry. And my mother says, 1 small one for the. And I said, trust me. For the 3 of us, that would be more than enough. And my mum was sort of like, what? So they'd never been to Five Guys before. So of course we got the bag. We went and sat down at the table and had our lunch. And my mum was sort of like, this is a small fries. I says, yes. And I had since told them the story about the first time that Brad and I took his 3 boys to a Five Guys when it opened in Chantilly back east. And we had the 5 of us had never been in a Five Guys before, but we had heard everybody raving about it. So well, let's go try it out. So we all ordered a large fry each. So we had 5 large fries. We had 1 big paper shopping bag full of just fries. You could have had that for a party. There was so many fries in there. Oh my gosh. And the guys behind the counter, when we said we wanted, we each wanted a large fry, they looked at me and went, okay, like, are you sure? And I wonder if they could tell we were first timers. Don't know. But anyway, went to Five Guys there and had a good lunch. And then the next day we had booked to go on a bus tour that picked us up from the campground, and it took us into downtown Vancouver. And from there we walked over to another area. No, they took us down to the ferry. Yeah, we ended up on the ferry and we went across to the island, went down to, and the bus tour took us down to Victoria. That's right, because the bus picked us up, took us all the way around Vancouver, then down to the ferry where we got on and went to the island. They took us down to the Bush Art Gardens first, and we had like 2 hours there walking around. That was fantastic. That was amazing. And then we went down to Victoria, and we got a couple of hours in Victoria, which was just awesome. Had a beaver tail, which I haven't had a beaver tail in years. And if you don't know what a beaver tail is, it's a kind of a pastry thing. And I had it sprinkled with, it's the shape of a beaver. It's a bread thing that's the shape of a beaver tail. And mine had sugar and cinnamon sprinkled on top. Yeah, we had a lovely wander around there before we had to get on the bus, and the bus took us all the way back to the ferry. We got on the ferry, and it took us back to the campground and everything. So we had a really, it was a good long day, that one. We must have been there for 3 days, because we did end up spending a day in downtown Vancouver wandering around. Oh, was that when we did the bus thing? We did I think we did the hop on, hop off bus that time. But we ended up doing these big long walks and everything. We ended up walking along the whole waterfront all the way over to where they have the place where you get on the horse and carriages that go around the park. But that was expensive to do that, so we elected we weren't going to do that. So we stopped, bathroom break. They had a kiosk there where you could get ice creams and stuff. So we had an ice cream break, and then we walked all the way back again. My parents are big walkers. We had a great day and figured out the bus system. That's right, we just took the bus into downtown. That's what we did. Took the bus into downtown. But we had a great day and had a great time up there in Vancouver. And then from Vancouver, we went down to Oregon, Portland area. Can't think of the name of it. And had a couple of nights there. And that's when that's when the electric steps stopped working. So I managed to find a repair person who came out, and they looked at him and says, no, he says, it's going to take me a couple of days to get the parts. And I says, but we leave tomorrow. And he's like, yeah, can't do anything by tomorrow morning. But he told us what the problem was. And so after that, Dad would actually step down with my little fold-up stool and put the fold-up stool out so Mum and I could then just step out because it was a big step. Yes, we had no more steps for the rest of the trip. Then from Oregon, we went down to, what was the name of that place? It was just inside the Oregon-California border. It was near there. Can't think of the name of it. But we spent a night there. Reminds me of another place name. Can't think of it right now. But we stopped off there and then had a night there. That was actually an interesting one. You actually drive into the campsite, and then when you leave, you have to back out. So it's nose-in parking. That was very interesting. Hadn't done that before. That was interesting. But we had a great view because we could leave the front blinds open until we needed to close them. And it was a view of the river. It was fantastic. Then we stayed in Redding, California. And we were there for 2 nights. And I was like, yeah, I don't like this. If my parents hadn't been with me, I would not have stayed there. I did not feel safe in that place at all. We were in a derelict part of Redding. Lots of closed buildings that were run down. And we were there, and we were going to go see the Sundial Bridge. We walked from the campsite down there. We were told there was a bus stop right out front of the campground, which there was, but they never used it. The buses didn't run past that, didn't stop at that bus stop anymore. Because when we called, I said, is there a bus stop that takes you down? Oh, yeah, there's a bus stop out here. When we got there, we found out that stop is no longer on any bus route. So we ended up walking the mile in August down to the park where the Sundial Bridge was, which is this glass bridge with this huge mast thing up at the other end, which is a sundial that is accurate from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's like the biggest one in the world or something. Can't remember, but it was a very exhausting walk because it was in the heat. And so we walked back across, did the whole thing, looking around the bridge and all that, and walked back, and they had this really nice little cafe gift store area. So we nosed around that for a bit, got cold drinks and ice creams or ice blocks, popsicles. I think we had popsicles. Or was it ice cream? Might have been ice cream and cold drinks. And that's sort of like, and when we sat in the shade, had those, and then we did the great big long walk back again. And then we left the next day, and I was glad to get out of that because basically it was just a parking lot. We get down there, it's all asphalt. There's all these long-term people staying there. There were long-term people up in the area, and they're transient people they put down on the bottom level, which was right there by the river. Easy flooding if a lot of rain came through. But it was just like a big parking lot. It was all asphalt, and yeah, it was that, and those were small lots as well. And somehow I have it on camera somewhere, but I have this picture of a tow trailer here that had a number written on the front, and then another tow trailer here, and somehow they managed to get in between a minivan. I'm like, we're looking at this thing the next, because we heard this horrific noise. I'm like, what the heck's that? And so we kind of peeked outside a little bit, and they had managed to get this van in between these two tow trailers. One of the tow trailers had the side out, and it was scraping. The van was scraping along them. And we're like, how? And I'm like looking at this thing going, well, how'd the driver get out? Because the driver's door was up against this tow trailer, and he had to pop over to the passenger seat and squeeze out the passenger seat side. And he did not have a lot of room because he basically got out and his back's up against the slide of the other thing, trying to close the door so he could then get it. Yeah, these were all young single men who were contractors for some construction thing or something, and this is where they had been put up in these tow trailers and things. So yeah, I would not have stayed there by myself. I would have skipped it and gone somewhere else. But it was the closest one to it. We didn't have a vehicle to get there, and we were told there was a bus stop, but they didn't tell us that the buses don't stop there anymore. From Reading, we went to San Francisco. Yes, we went to San Francisco, and we stayed in Marin County, and we were about a mile walk from the campground to the ferry that went across to downtown San Diego. So we hopped on the ferry, went across to and they had these little card things you could use, and so we got those, filled them up for enough to get on the ferry, and then we went across the ferry to downtown San Francisco, and these passes gave us unlimited use of the cable cars and the buses and the trolleys and all of that around the city. So we made good use of those, because those hills, I am walking up them hills. But we went down to the Fisherman's Wharf area and did this whole thing. And the funny thing was, my mother did not want to go to Alcatraz, but she was like, when we were in the ferry, she's like, well, where's Alcatraz? Where is it? And then we were down at the Fisherman's Wharf, we were able to show where Alcatraz was there too. Then we made the mistake of taking her to see the sea lions. And yeah, we were there for 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes. I don't know. We just couldn't drag my mother away from there. But we did go to the big bakery there, which I can't think of the name of, where they have the clam chowder in the bread bowls. It's such good clam chowder. So we got there. And of course, all the restrooms, there was these restrooms and stuff that you couldn't get into because they were locked. But if you were a customer at one of the eating places, they would give you the code and you could get in. And so we went up in the In-N-Out place, and did we actually order there or not? We said to the girl behind the counter, I says, look, I need to order food, but I need to go to the bathroom really fast before I can order the food. And so she says, oh yeah, here's the code. Or was the code, I think the code may have been written on the back of the register or something. But we got the code, went down there, used the restroom facilities, and you can hear people on the other side punching away at the buttons and they're not getting it to open. And I figured that's a good way to get in. Just stand there and punch the buttons so somebody comes in and you go, oh, thank you for letting me in. I can't remember what the last number was. Or something like that. So we learned these little tricks. We did the open air fire engine trip while we were there as well. My dad used to be a fireman many, many years ago, and so that was kind of fun. We're on an open air fire truck, and they did this tour of the city, and it wasn't the couple that that Brad and I had years ago with this elderly couple, and the guy was a retired fireman, and they actually live in a firehouse, and they live upstairs in the firehouse, and then downstairs they have this fireman museum thing area. Never did get to go see that, But they took us on this great trip around. Mum and Dad enjoyed the trip, and we went to Ghirardelli's. We had coupons for Ghirardelli's to get free Sundays or $5 off the Sundays or something. And so we had these beautiful, yummy Sundays at Ghirardelli's. They didn't have the tours on there. We didn't do the tour. But yeah, we had a fun day down there. And then we caught the ferry back, and it happened to be the rush hour ferry. There was no seating on them. And of course, we're there. We're trying to get the thing to work so we can get on the ferry. And this woman who was one of the staff members came along and went, "Oh, you're here to catch this ferry?" And we're like, "Yeah." And she says, "Oh, come with me really quick." And so she called them because they were getting ready to pull the gangplank. And they were just about to pull it when she's like, wait. And they actually allowed us to get on. So there was definitely no seating. So we just stood where we landed. And then when, of course, we get back the other side, and I'm just like exhausted. We're all exhausted, but we managed to make it back to the campground, and we just all collapsed. Had cold drinks, all collapsed. And then Mum eventually got us dinner. And then we left the next day and went to, where did we go there? There was a campground we went to, and they are going to be building an aircraft museum, but I was under the impression the aircraft museum was already built, but it wasn't. They built the campground first, and then they were going to be breaking ground for the aircraft museum, for the Warbirds Museum that they were going to be building there. And somebody had told us about that campground, and we were there a couple of nights, got all our laundry done. I tell you, they had the nicest restrooms, very, very clean. In fact, because the park was brand new, but very windy at 2:00 in the afternoon. You did not have your awning out at 2:00 in the afternoon because that's when the wind came, and it would rip the thing off. But what was one of the campgrounds we went to? Oh no, that was when I went with Zeffie last year. Don't worry about that one. And then from there, we were going down towards Santa Barbara, and we stopped off in Solvang because I wanted them to try those little round apple pancake thingies that they have that they're famous for in Solvang, the ones that people can't pronounce. And so we got there, and it happened to be a classic car show that day. And I was like, "Oh, this is really cool. Let's stop and have it." And my parents are like, "Nope." So we're like, "Okay." We didn't do any shopping, any browsing or anything. It was straight into the diner, have these apple pancakes, and go back to the RV, and off we went. And they actually had an RV parking area in one of the car park areas. They had slots for RVs, so that was kind of cool. And so then we went to go to this Rancho Ozo. It's in the middle of the back of Beyond. And Dad says, "You know where the back of Beyond is?" And and we'll go, "Yeah." And he goes, "We're beyond that." We had no cell service. So that was one night when I couldn't do my Facebook live, but I recorded it at the same time because we had no signal, no Wi-Fi, no nothing. We were completely off the grid. If we wanted Wi-Fi, we had to walk a mile across the other side of the campground, and maybe we would have got a signal from their boosters. And I was like, "It's dark. No." I don't know what creatures are crawling around here, but I ain't going out in the dark. And so I recorded it that night. And then when we got service the next day, then it uploaded and everything else. So that was one of those rules that I made for myself, that if I was in an area where there was no signal, no Wi-Fi, no cell phone service, no nothing, then it still counted if I recorded the live at the normal time and then uploaded it as soon as I got signal, which is what we did. So we were there, we got there, we had no reservation. I tried making a reservation on the Saturday, and they said, they have limited availability, but you have to call the office. But the office is closed on the weekends. And so we got, and we pull off the main road, go along this National Forest Park road for about 2 miles, I think it was. Then we had to turn off onto this narrow, windy, hilly, was it dirt road? Or was it just really bad asphalt on it? Can't remember, but it was a really bad road. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And there's cars pulling up behind me. And so I'm slowly taking these hairpin turns and very narrow road. And I'm like, "Oh, I hope we don't come across." We came across somebody the other way, so we had to pull over as far as we could. Luckily, we had the cliff on the passenger's side, the uphill cliff, not the drop that was on the other side. And so we allowed them to squeeze past. And as soon as they'd squeezed past, I put my hand out the window and signaled for the cars to come around us, and they all did. And so we just followed them, and I think it was like 2 or 3 miles from when we left that road to when we got to the gate. And we get to the gate, and like I said, we're in the middle of nowhere, and the ranger comes out, and he's sort of like, "Oh, what's the name on the reservation?" I said, "We don't have one." And he stops I said, here's my membership card. I tried to make a reservation. It said it was limited availability. So I figured you had spaces. The office is closed. Couldn't call in to make a reservation. So here's my membership card. And he says, you drove all the way out here with no reservation. I said, yep. I said, we don't need, I said, the water tank's filled, so I don't even need a water hookup. I said, I don't need a sewer hookup. We emptied that at the last campground. I said, all I need is power. I said, so if that's all you've got, that'll do. And if you don't have power, we'll figure it out. I said, I can park on a tent site if I need to. It's just for the one night. And he just started laughing. But he managed to find one that had no sewer hookup, but it had water and power. And so he told us exactly which area to go into. And so we were just there for the night in the middle of nowhere and came out the next day. And we drove from there all the way back to Campground in San Diego. So we had this 3,227 miles in 27 days. We had quite an adventure. And the campground we ended up at is one that's in Encinitas. It's Encinitas or Escondido? Escondido. But it's one I'm not staying at. I mean, it was fine staying there when I first stayed there, but then they just started upping their prices like crazy. And it's sort of like, you've got a homeless problem with this campground, with homeless people coming and getting into the facilities that are locked with a combo, with a combination lock, and they're sleeping in the park that's over the fence, and you're charging exorbitant prices because of your location, because you're right off the freeway. I'm like, yeah, I ain't staying there no more. They just priced themselves out of the market. But we stayed there when we were there because we had the reservations, and it was close to the oldest son's place, and can't remember how we got down to San Diego to pick up our car. I don't remember how we got down there, but we got all the way down to the son who lived in the middle of downtown there, and where my car had been stored for the 3 weeks, and and then we were there 2 or 3 nights, I think it was, before I had to drive back to LA to drop Mum and Dad off at the airport. So, but that was one vacation that we had. It was very exhausting, very tiring. I learned a lot about RV driving, especially up and down hills. My dad, who's driven probably just about everything out there, was able to give me some good pointers about using the gears and not the brakes to help drive up and down hills, and how to use the tow button thingy to help keep it in a lower gear and that sort of stuff. And so I learned a lot about driving up and down hills with my dad. So that was cool. But we had a good trip. It was a good trip. We got to see a lot. But yeah, that was quite the trip. Learned a lot about RVing in that trip. But yes, that was August of 2019. So it was a lot of fun. Very exhausting. Like I said, learned a lot. I don't stay one night at any place anymore. It's a minimum of 2 nights. If I can't get into a place for 2 nights, I don't stay there. I find somewhere else. It's as simple as that. But anyway, I'm out of here. I've talked way too long. You can tell I'm tired because I'm over talking. So I am going to go see if my dog needs to go out again, and then I'm off to bed. So have a super fantastic sparkling rest of the evening, and we'll catch you guys bright and early tomorrow morning for Fun Friday. Yes! Yay! Hey, Conora.